I gotta say, um, I spent a while not liking it, and then I fell in love with it so hard that even the possibility of going to California, maybe for vacation, but for work, I'm hedging my bets for Vancouver. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Are you originally from there, or do you just move there?
So I actually came from the other Vancouver. There's a Vancouver in Washington State. That's where my family
Oh,
is.
uh-huh.
Yeah. And then I'm here because I'm Canadian, but also because I came here for undergrad. And then I stuck around.
Oh, nice. Well, that's a great story. Yeah, I might have to come visit because I've heard great things, but I think the best time to go is during summertime. Is that correct?
I would say it's a mix. If you love skiing, we have ski slopes like within an hour's drive from the city. In the
Hmm.
summer, we have beaches, we have the mountains and hiking. So it kind of depends on you. If you're a foodie, time does not constrict you. You can come whenever you want. And I'm quite serious. I spent the last 2 years making my Instagram feed an endless feed of new restaurants and food events. It's endless. It really is.
That sounds great. I would definitely need some tips then. But the room just opened up, so I'm gonna switch myself to be a listener. If you guys need anything, just let me know.
All right.
Amazing. All right, we'll give it another minute and then we are going to get started. So, thank you everybody for being here. I am literally so excited about this chat. It's honestly not even funny. Yeah, so Valentina has helped us from Fishbowl with so many talks, and I don't know if you guys in the audience have heard our previous talks, but having Katie here today is going to be so amazing. We have like literally a jam-packed agenda. We're probably going to have to do another one of these. So this is going to be just super, super exciting. So buckle up. But yeah, I'm going to just dive right in and give a little opener here. So thank you everybody for joining. My name is Rachel Surwitz, and I am the founder and CEO and career coach at Woken. So we are just so excited to be back on Fishbowl, and you can follow us by clicking our profiles to be notified of future events. And I usually am here doing some events every 2 or so weeks, which is really exciting, all different career topics. And today we are talking as part of a series, Navigating the Workplace. And our goal is to just kind of be as open and honest and direct and specific and helpful as humanly possible to help you navigate your career and your job search. And really, there's just nothing off limits that we can talk about today. And so today specifically, I am featuring not a recruiter, no like quote unquote, it's not me chatting with another quote unquote expert or career coach. I'm actually chatting here with a job seeker. And the reason I love that is because she has identified so many amazing tactics that I would love for other seekers to emulate. And I think it's just going to open up your minds to be a little more creative in terms of how she's approached things. So we're going to throw out the rule book, shake it up, and just pursue some different activities. So we are going to interview Katie for about 40 minutes, and then we are going to have open-ended, audience Q&A for about 20 minutes. And at that point, you can raise your hand and join the stage, or you can send us a DM with your question if you want to stay anonymous. So I will quickly introduce myself, and then Katie will do the same. So hi, I'm Rachel. My career, I started out, I was at Goldman Sachs, and then I was at Bridgewater Associates. I was in operations and then recruiting and performance management. From there, I actually was job searching and receiving career coaching when I realized there's a lot out there that is lackluster for job seekers. And I had all these ideas. I actually got coaching training, got certified, and started building innovative tools and frameworks. And 6.5 years later, I've been building my own company, Woken, to help professionals with all different types of career goals and challenges. Our forte is clarifying your direction. I also did a tech MBA at NYU Stern, and I've done career coaching through a variety of other organizations as well. And that is the very quick synopsis of me. Katie, please give us a quick intro to your background, and then we're going to dive into the Q&A.
Yeah. So, hey everyone. I'm Katie. I'm based in Vancouver, the Greater Vancouver, Canada. I'm trying to break into product management from a non-tech background. And I'm gonna use some titles people have given me. So in this first part of my job hunting journey, people have told me I'm a super networker. I'm really good at sales, which was very unexpected. And also, I'm currently in the process of just spending a lot of time having fun on the job hunt. Specifically, this stage, I'm wrapping up networking and moving on to building out portfolio stuff next. So yeah, other background things is I've worked in all sorts of small industries from elder care, childcare, education, e-commerce, logistics. It's all just small business stuff. So yeah, that's my background. Oh, last thing. I've spent 3 years taking care of an 80-year-old grandma, which took me out of the corporate environment for a while. So I'm coming in with a gap. So anyone who can identify with that, I'm speaking to you.
Yep, she's got a lot of different skills in her background, but I think the most important is how Katie is just showing up to this phase of job search and sort of redefining, job search. And I think this talk actually, I didn't really make this into one of our questions, but I think the way you've approached job search is something similar to what I've been saying recently, which is you may not even need to label it job search. You think about it like career advancement, and then it just starts to imbue these ideas instead of like, I'm applying, applying, applying. It's like, I'm getting out there and doing all these different valuable things for me in my career, right? So even just categorizing it and thinking about this phase with a different title, right? Like, why, it's the label job search, it just makes you feel I'm searching and I'm in need of something versus I'm growing and I'm advancing, which it gives you different ideas about where to spend your time and how to think about this, how to show up and how to feel in this part of the process and in this phase. So Katie, just to open it up, right? How can you share with us a little bit, like, you show up to your job search, you even just said that it's fun, and I think a lot of people shudder just hearing those words. You've called it an adventure, right? So like, what does this all mean to you? Like, is this just lip service or are you actually having fun? Like, tell us what this means to you.
Oh my goodness. So when I set out on this journey, I made one rule to myself, and it ties into like the North Star of whatever I do. It's everything I do, I want it to be something I love so much that I share with others. And that's sort of the spirit of the adventure. And so, and I use this to lead my whole life. So jumping into the job search, I kind of reframed it into thinking, okay, when you lose your job or when you're out of job, it's like you get hired into unemployment LLC. You're now in the worst, horribly managed company that is known as unemployment LLC. And if you are trying to break into some sort of career or role, that is sort of like if you were hired into this is what you're trying to do. And so at the start, I was like, I want to be a product manager, but I don't really have the skills or background in it. But if I was hired into a company like Unemployment LLC, what are the things I could do to make this happen? So at the core of what a product manager is, it's somebody who's really good at communicating with a lot of people, getting them together and solving a problem that everyone needs. And so I started out with the problem of Vancouver's job market and job hunting just kind of sucks. So what can I do to then change this? And so that is sort of the start of this adventure. And so in all of this, if we're playing the long game of what, keeping a job in an unemployment LLC would be, you probably don't want to, but the idea would be how can I make connections and foster relationships that expand beyond just this singular point of time of I lost my job and I need to get hired, right? Because
Mhm.
the people you make friends with now might be there for you 10, 20 years down the road. And I actually proved this because Rachel is somebody I met 2 years ago. She was like a career coach. I hit up for Woken, and the system she built was incredible. I like looked at it and I felt like it was missing, that this sort of career exploration portion was missing. And so I did it. We end up splitting ways, but I came back to her because I
Hmm.
really valued the mission she had. So it's crazy. Like this whole journey of sharing, so many people have been popping out from my past.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And just thinking about it differently. And when you I love how you're like the unemployment LLC. It's funny because I always say you got to show up to your job search as if it's a job, or like as if you're a CEO of a startup. And so it just gives you a different perspective. And I've seen you do really creative things like showing up as if you're already in the role that you want. You post on LinkedIn, these epics, which if somebody's not in the technical world, an epic is, something within the product management world, just like sort of a mini little story, a mini little use case. And so she's literally even writing on LinkedIn in the product management language and sharing things about job search, but in a format of a product manager, right? She even was starting a product accelerator and things like that. So when you're naturally showing up with the hat, right? Like she's like, I'm a product manager, even though like it's Unemployment LLC. She's acting that way and showing up that way with her thought leadership, with her voice on LinkedIn, showing up to different programs that way, showing up to different conversations and events that way. So you're wearing that hat from the get go. Because I think the problem about job search is we subconsciously sometimes just don't feel that we have value if nobody hired us to have give them value. But you're like, I'm hired into my own company right now, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to build value and I'm going to build skills and I'm going to build relationships. So you take it upon yourself to show up in this value giving type of a way versus like, the subconscious, I have nothing to give because no one hired me right now. You're just like flipping it, right? Like I've hired myself, you know? So Katie, you have mentioned there's two main goals as a job seeker. You've mentioned there's figuring out your skills and your fit and the path that makes sense for you, and there's figuring out how to job search. When do you focus on each of those?
Mhm. So, yeah, I think this ultimately comes down to how well you can figure out where you are in life right now. For me, it made sense for me to really, really focus on sort of who I am, which is part of the skills and fit path, because I had that gap. I really don't know how I fit into the ecosystem of job hunting and companies right now because I don't have a frame of reference. And so I made a choice of doing 100% effort into this for a month. But for somebody who has been working, this might not be something you might need, right? You might actually have all the skills you need. For example, I've talked to a friend, he's a QA. He'd spent zero time working on portfolio, working on resume and all of this stuff. All he did was focused on the job search function because he was working this role already and he didn't
Mm-hmm.
plan on pivoting. And he
Mm-hmm.
actually just DM'd some people who were working at a company and then he got his job interviews that way. Like
Mm-hmm.
zero effort on the portfolio front, right? So it sort of comes down to a balance of what do you need information wise right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it makes sense. It's like, do you know what path is a fit for you? Do you know what path you want? Do you have the portfolio to show it? And if you're making a change and you're doing a pivot, that's fine and well and good, but you need to know what the path forward is and you need to build some use cases and some portfolio behind you to show that you can do it. And then the next piece of the puzzle is how do I actually job search, right? And actually learning that as a skill, right? And not just assuming you know how to job search, right? Like there's different things to master: the clarity of your path, building the portfolio to show it, and understanding how to actually navigate, how to network, how to get yourself out there. And it's not just applying online and just using it as a skill to understand how to job search itself, right?
Yeah, I would even say there is overlap. This networking piece, the people piece, will be present in both of them, and it's been crazy for me because I have just been showing up, asking lots of questions, and people who are further down the line of they are approaching me and saying, "Hey, when you're ready to brand yourself or when you're ready to start job hunting, please reach out." And I think that's the powerful connection between the two is like people are there to help you. Um, all these conversations I've been having, I haven't been necessarily going out and specifically looking for help. I've just been showing up and asking questions and honestly following my curiosity. And when I mean this, some of the questions I ask people make no sense with the job hunt. This is the adventure part. You sort of follow, like when you're on a vacation or something, you sort of follow things that stand out to you that are strange and bizarre, and you ask about it. And then you never know where it'll lead. One
Mm-hmm.
example, the most clickbait example is I actually ended up soundboarding with somebody working on a product they were developing with ChatGPT for job hunters. And I'd been like spending so much time talking to other job hunters, getting job hunting strategies. I talked to him. And then eventually we got so excited that he blurts out, "You want to come to my yacht?" And
Mhm.
I was like, "Wait, what?" This was like probably the most clickbait thing that had happened to me to this point, and this
Yeah.
was 2 weeks in. And I ended up following up to him. I haven't gone to his yacht, but I ended up making him promise to let me try his one-wheel electric unicycle thing that he brought,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
like, really random.
Yeah.
And this is, like, the sort of joy you might run into because people are cool. Like, they do all sorts of things besides just job, right? They have other aspects of their life.
Right. And just not making it transactional. Like remembering they're a person, they have professional skills and interests, they have a background, they have goals, they have a direction, they have interests, they have challenges, but they also have a personal life. And it's a human to human thing where you can get really deep and authentic about who you are and what you're all about, and the same on their side. And so I always say when you're networking, like, it's as if you're just talking shop. Like if you were at a conference sitting next to another product manager, what would you want to talk about and ask about and learn about with a colleague, right? Versus I'm getting on this call because I have to, or I'm like forcing it. I'm checking the box. I'm transactionally asking for something I know I'm supposed to be asking, versus like, I'm a person with these interests and questions and challenges and goals, and you're a person with interests and challenges and goals and a personal life and all these wonderful things, and we're connecting on that level, and that's going to resonate, and they're going to feel that, even if it's subconscious, they're going to want to help you because they're going to get to know you better. So just remembering that these connections and relationships are real, or can be real if you treat it that way, and it'll probably be more effective. They're going to get to know you better and want to help you and be better able to help you because they got to know you better. So there's just so many benefits to showing up in a very real and honest way. Plus, when you're honest on these phone calls, you're actually going to learn what you need to learn, right? Like versus like, I think a lot of people show up to networking and just like don't know what they're supposed to do on these types of meetings, right? So it's like, what would be helpful to you, right? Like, and use the time to your advantage, right?
I would even go even further to make sure that when you do meet people, because job hunting is front of mind. There's this trap that can be dangerous, which is like end up just talking about nothing related to the job hunt.
Mm, yeah.
So yeah, so when I find sort of communities so where I can talk to people who are there because they are sort of in this frame of mind of career, and it helps sort of make sure the conversations move towards like we're building something or we're doing something. Or the most recent one is funny. So in order to find out more about how a product manager operates, there's something called a product trio, which is like a product manager, an engineer, and then you have, your user you're interviewing. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I can't be a product manager or engineer, but I can be a user. So I ended up messaging some people who were like, okay, we need feedback on a product we're building. And I
Mm-hmm.
ended up on a call with the three of them. And at the end, I asked, so this is a product trio, isn't it? And they said yes. And then they ended up sharing more information about that. And now I have this connection with the person who interviewed me. It's like, if you would like to talk about product management, you can now DM me. I just
Wow.
find this one
I
so
love
funny.
that. I mean, just first of all, like sort of sneakily, scrappily getting in the right conversations. I love that so much. Again, you're like doing the job you're supposed to be doing, like, but just be a user. Like, how can you, like, I love that. For anybody interested in the world of product, like giving user feedback and things like that. But I mean, the whole idea is doing the job even if you're not in it, and like just entering yourself physically into that world somehow. So being creative, like, I just love that. And the beauty of that too, not only did you like meet people that way, but you can come away, and even if you never led a trio, now you just saw how they did. So all of a sudden you have a deeper understanding of like what this thing actually is. You're entering yourself into that world. Not every single job is going to have to involve user feedback where you can, act as a user, and whatever it is, but just thinking in that vein of how to get scrappy and creative and just like start being in the world, doing the work, doing the projects with the right people and having those conversations somehow, right, is just so awesome. I love it. Katie, you've mentioned there's a few top sources that you've seen people getting jobs from. Because the other thing I will just call out, and this is just from my conversations with Katie, is that she's just spoken to so many people, and some of those are just people in the job she wants to be in, but others are job seekers. So she's actually learning from other peers and seeing what they're doing successfully and what's working in job search and what's not working in job search. So remember, you're not just meeting and networking with the people in the jobs, you're meeting with those job seekers as well. So you've mentioned even staffing agencies, you've mentioned referrals and your personal network. Like, anecdotally, what are you seeing from those around you that's really working more than other things?
Okay, this is like the perfect segue into my favorite conversation that was two coffee chats in. So I met with a guy. He came to Vancouver, immigrant, 50 days ago. And he sat down with me and he gave me a 2.5 hour master class on how he went from being somebody who plopped out of here with no connections and had endless job offers. Or it was endless interview offers. And so, literally, one of the things he did was he would go into yeah, he would go into and create like a list of companies in the top industry that he wanted to go into. And then he would look at the people who were around the team. So this is sort of like everyone says, like you need to cold DM the people in the company. Well, he did this by approaching the people who had the same background as him. He's an engineer, has some maintenance experiences. So the language he's used to speaking is like that's how he can talk shop. So he found the people who he could speak effortlessly with and just DM them. And he was relentless. He would spend these like every other week or so. The most impactful story about this was he tried tried to get a conversation with a VP, and he sent a total of 6 DMs before he made that connection. And before, the top 5 of those connections were talking shop, but the very last one was a simple, "How was your day?" So the story sort of shows that, like, again, it's this component that everyone's sort of human and kind of want to talk about something besides it, but also like you can break into understanding the company and the roles that you want to be in by sort of asking the context around the job posts, because the job posts they're not great. Like, I actually had to write a job post at one point in a past job. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know like who I was looking for. There's this dynamic of it too. Like, if your company has a big, human resource or recruiter team, maybe they'll have better design job posting, but otherwise you're kind of clueless. So his purpose of doing that was actually to get context on all of like the inner workings of the company. And the crazy thing is, in those conversations, in those relationships he built, he had them actually all look at his resume. And so by the time he approached HR, he had already had half the team edit his resume to fit that company before that conversation, which is
Mm,
insane to me.
yeah.
Not that this always works, but this was his strategy. And then I took this bit, and shared it with others, because this is a story that everyone can learn a little bit from. And most impactful thing for me was I learned that this story didn't just happen to help people in the job hunting phase, but people who are currently working. So I had a friend she was like really devastated and worried about losing her job and everything. And I shared this story and helped her kind of open her mind that, job hunting doesn't have to be a scary thing. There are ways around it. And so she could just forget about that sort of anxiety around that and just focus on what she had to get done
Yeah.
in her job and that place. And it's just a sort of connection where if you share strategies and things like that with the people around you, it helps everyone. We
Yeah.
don't gatekeep. We really want to just share all these stories around. And so I ask people now, like, what are you doing? And then I share them with other people. And it's just like this whole thing.
Yeah.
That's what the job hunting epics are partially influenced by. It's like, I found this worked. So
Yeah, and you've also mentioned just getting really specific and really granular. Like, when job seekers tell you, like, here's how I actually handle a networking call. Here's what I actually say during this type of situation. Like, you go really deep to actually learn from each other. And I think that is what really starts to help job seekers when, whether you're asking a mentor, a peer, a career coach, or whoever, I think people it takes them time to even realize what to ask of the other people around them, but like literally getting to the point of language of like, what do I say on these phone calls, or what do I say in this email, or like what do I do in these types of situations, and like get that level, right, like that specific with the people around you, so you understand how other people are doing it, and to your point, what's working, what's not working, but go to that great detail, because there's other people around you doing this, and there's going to be certain things that resonate or don't. Like when I'm working with a client, we'll literally draft email language, together, because it sounds so simple, but an email to a hiring manager or to a networking connection or whatever it is, could go a very long way to either like get no response or to get a great response. So, get specific with the people around you to get help, right? Because there are things you can learn. There's tactics, there's best practices, and there's people around you trying things, and they're experimenting and they're learning, right? So learn from each other, right?
Yeah, I'd even go further that you can extend this. So the other issue that like networking has is like, you meet them once and then you never see them again. So what I've done is I invite them on my journey. So the epic is one way, but besides that, like whenever I run into a new discovery or something on the job hunt, because I've met people, I've talked to them, I know where they are in life, it sort of inspires me. If any specific story might resonate with them, I will actually share that. And in a way, I'm sort of celebrating all the tiny wins along the journey. So even before, like everyone's like, okay, when you hit the when you get hired, that's supposed to be the high point of, the job hunt. But for me, what I've done is I've actually created small moments of victory along the way. And so I can just laugh and have fun. And so I track these too. Like my favorite metric is how many times have I laughed out loud on this job hunt?
Mm,
Last month, it was half of the days, 15 out of the 30 days, because of the sheer joy of like being able to celebrate these victories, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. Again, just showing up authentically. Um, you've mentioned like validating your skills and figuring out what role you're a best fit with. You've mentioned, thinking about the perspective of hiring managers and like de-risking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is actually going to be moving forward what I'm going to really double down, but my understanding of this, so during the job hunt I've talked to recruiters, I've talked to a headhunter at one point, um, and what I think the problem so far has been, for the most part, of other job hunters and myself, is we actually don't know the information you guys need, like recruiters and headhunters, because they have they get swallowed by a volume of information, right? We all know this. Like we all know there's this sort of race to the bottom with ChatGPT creating more applications than can be imagined, and then also them using ChatGPT to then combat it. And it's like, how in the world are you supposed to find the best fit? Because that's what you're supposed to. That's the whole point of a job hunt. Is like it's a two-way conversation where we need to figure out both sides are happy with this match, right? And so with that, it's like actually making recruiters and headhunters and all these people your friends because they know exactly what they need. And so, like, for me, the ways I've been getting this is like finding where they live. So I met somebody who's creating an event for recruiters, and I DM'd him and I told him about this problem I see, like in job hunting, and he invited me to that event. So I get now not just one recruiter, I am now talking with a room of recruiters, and
Mm,
I can just ask all these sort of questions about what do they actually need to know. It's that sort of back and forth conversation. Like, how do you design your portfolio and cover letter and all these things? Oops, sorry. That is my lovely grandma. Um,
oh.
yeah. So it's really just getting that perspective so that you can align. Because at the end of the day, they also just want to get people to the next job. They don't want to have an open position for open for too long, right? And
Yeah.
they will be your best cheerleader. Like I had a friend, different friend, who mentioned like the 7-part interview test for a software engineer.
Hmm.
During every single one of those 7 steps, because he made friends with this recruiter, this recruiter gave them information at every single step. They support them,
Hmm.
not the other. They are not your enemies. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, like learn and ask questions. And the irony too is if they see you're prepared and inquisitive and organized and thorough by asking the recruiter questions, like they're just going to be impressed by that because you're engaged, you're taking it seriously, and you're taking the interview process seriously. Now, you may not be able to go above and beyond for every single interview process, but really cherry pick the ones that deserve your attention. And you can just remember that how you engage throughout the process, they're still looking at that and they're still getting to know you, even how you send an email and how you follow up and how you communicate. But I love in general that you're just thinking about the other side, thinking about how they're de-risking the process, thinking the perspective of the recruiters and the hiring managers. And it just really doesn't hurt to try to put yourself in their shoes for a second to see how that influences your own thinking on yourself as a candidate, and what can you do differently, and how can you also leverage them to learn and improve your process. But just remember, like, what is their side of the coin? What is their goal? And what does that mean for me? Like, I wonder if that would illuminate, am I even going after the right things? Like, you don't want to waste their time. You also don't want to waste your time, right? So, like, see how it helps you when you get really deep with what are they doing here? Who are they searching for? What's the context behind this job? And where do I fit in? And if that story isn't clear, this may not be the right conversation that we're having, right? So taking it extremely seriously. I think sometimes job search can be very surface level of like, I see this online application and I just apply, versus going really deep to remember there's people behind the posting, and there's goals at the end of the posting, and there's real work to be done, and sometimes people are applying for things that are totally a fit. But if there's any lack of clarity on the job posting itself, thinking about really who's at the other end of it can help deepen, am I pursuing the right things, essentially.
I'm also going to address one of the elephants in the room that I hear from other friends and myself too. There's that little, voice in your head saying, "Am I doing too much work for no return?" Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when you do all of this, right? And so for me, how I think about this sort of question is every single thing you do where you put yourself out there, it is exercising the muscle so that you can operate automatically and authentically. So every single rep you're putting in when you have to do those interview processes or anything is a skill you're developing. And if you can take that as a lesson that you can transfer into something else, for example, answering questions with an interviewer, you can practice your communication skills. I have learned how to talk to probably every single type of person I might run into
Mm.
in my future role, because a story you tell won't resonate the same way to every single type of person. Somebody who is a intern won't resonate the same way as a director, for example. And so by practicing the skill of communicating with different people in different backgrounds, I've learned storytelling. Like I yeah, I've actually been told that I should do this more, and that is feedback other people have given me. I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome there, but like having other people validate that, like as you grow these soft skills in these contexts, right? That's the value you get when you show up over and over and over. It's also the work ethic. So by showing up in all of this, I have gotten, before even formally requesting for a job, I've gotten paid twice accidentally through volunteer work. They give you like gift cards and stuff afterwards. So I didn't realize this. I just showed up because I was like, this is cool. And I want to support women. That was one of the events. But I accidentally got paid on this journey of showing up. And then another person told me, like, that part of de-risking, it's like when you show up and you prove to yourself that you can be consistent, that's going to show up also in your interviews, like unconsciously. It melds into your psyche, and then how you show up when you actually get into work, you'll have those repetitions in and you can start right away, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Yeah, like we've talked about just being authentic, and how I know it just sounds like this overused word at this point, but we've talked about how you don't have to like force your preparation when you just are being yourself. I think people sometimes show up to the job search and it feels forced, like quote unquote, I have to have an elevator pitch, versus wait, like who am I and what is my actual story? And that's just the elevator pitch, like getting more real, right? Like, who am I? And yes, like, what is the way I can practice and workshop saying it in the best way? Sure. But if you just think about it, like, how do I answer this interview question, or how do I do this elevator pitch? It's like forced. Versus, what is an elevator pitch? It's a way to explain who you are in a concise, clear, comprehensive manner. And so if you understand who you are, right, then we can wordsmith it. So tell us more, Katie, like, how you think about that. You've mentioned to me, I don't even have to prepare for meetings sometimes. I mean, I know you're very thoughtful of what do I want out of this interaction, or you strategically prepare in that way, but you don't have to prepare in the sense of a cookie cutter, like, how am I going to phrase this? It's you've sorted out the hard answers first, right, which makes it easier to kind of just show up and be in the moment, and naturally you're getting what you need out of these interactions because you're showing up as you, and they're getting to know where you're at right now. You're being honest with them, right? So yeah, tell us more about, like, you've mentioned I don't have to prepare, things like that. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So there's sort of this component that it's an emotional component that comes with all of this. So what I've done really carefully about for my job hunt, and I learned this lesson from the last time I tried a job hunt, was I've been creating psychologically safe spaces for myself to exist as myself. So basically, instead of like trying to force myself into like outside of way outside my comfort zone where it's actually scary to explain who I am, I take baby steps. So for me, where I started first was actually introducing myself to my cousins. They are not my parents, but they're at the same level, that age level where it's like, okay, they're older and they have sort of authority. By the way, my cousins are like 10 years older than me. They're quite much like 10, 15 years older than me. Some of them are 20 years older, big family. So by having this sort of safe space to just be myself and practice those reps and hear their perspective was actually where I started first. I didn't go out and meet a bunch of strangers straight out because for me that was too scary. So having those like just outside of your comfort zone things and baby stepping your way up. Even this like talk with you, Rachel, this is my first time talking on live and it's was
Yes.
honestly kind of terrifying. But I think I'm having fun. And so on this journey, I had like 3 people invite me to podcasts. I said no to those because it was like too scary for me. But I'm talking with you here because I feel safe with you. And I also pretty sure most of the people I've met have never heard of Fishbowl, but now this is like the perfect excuse to get them on Fishbowl too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Invite people on journeys, try things,
Yeah.
create spaces where you can just show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. We've talked about creating a supportive network. We've talked about, just where job seekers, who should job seekers be leveraging. Where do you suggest job seekers find information?
Oh my gosh, this is my favorite topic. I
Mhm.
am a personal knowledge management nerd. So I spent a lot of time thinking about where information lives, and so to answer this is quite complicated. But if I boil it down, think about what you need information wise at this point of time. For example, when I'm in the last month, my first piece of information that I wanted to figure out was where do I want to job hunt? Like, what is the location? Do I want to be online? Do I want to be in person or anything? You need to identify the question that you want to answer. That is the number one first step. And then after that, the places where you can look are LinkedIn, other people. And at the beginning, you won't really know where to look because it's a chicken or egg problem. You ask people. People are number one, the best source of information of where to go next. Like
Mhm.
they have other people, especially if they're 3, 4, 5 years ahead of you, have already done the work of trying and experimenting and all of that, and they distill it into something. You just need to be somebody who has done the prep work of asking and thinking about what questions you need to help yourself. This is what owning, the job search is about. Is like, do you know how to help yourself first before you ask for other people to help you?
Mhm.
Right? Because that's what leads the conversations. Now, there is a second portion to this though, because sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And
Mhm.
so you look for mentorship platforms. So ADP List is one of my favorites. It's an automatic like mentorship matching thing where most of the people there have been really well vetted, and they show up 90% to 100% of the time. You get free time with somebody who's really experienced. And then with those, a lot of them have experience being a mentor. So they see the sort of ideas into you because they know you don't know, but they know how to give you that information. And this is an online version. The in-person version is honestly, I've just been asking friends of my parents because honestly, I don't get advice from my parents because there's too much emotional baggage there.
Hmm.
But the cool thing is when you ask the friends of your parents, because they already have like 10 years, 20 years of experience. So they're like senior roles in what they're doing, most likely. They have so much experience. You have these conversations with them, and they have the ability to ask you questions back. And what's beautiful about this is in having these conversations, you have now created an advocate for you so that in the background, when your parents ask their friends about how you're doing and stuff, they actually have context and they can vet for you and they're like, don't worry about it. It makes the whole ecosystem of like being at the family table and they breathing down your neck and say like, how is it going? Now you have other people that have been invited that don't have, that mindset that you're just a kid, you're just the daughter or whatever the case, and they're
Mm.
there for you too. And that has
Yeah.
been one of the coolest things I've found from this.
Yeah, I love it for so many reasons. Like number one, instead of like avoiding family and friends, like you can invite them in a way that works for you. Like it can be scary at first, and I have a whole blog on how do you navigate like family and friends and personal relationships and job search because a lot of times there's people that you may not want to invite to the conversation, but I think our gut might be sometimes the avoid the conversation with personal connections, but leverage them even if they're not in your target roles or industries. Like how can they help you? That wisdom, that perspective, they may just honestly, I think half the battle with job search is just getting new ideas and like variety, new people, new events, new situations, new places, new communities, new tactics, new methods, new whatever it may be, and just trying. Not that you should be random, but just opening your horizons. So don't ignore the circle of personal connections around you. You never know who they may know. You never know what they've gone through. You never know what tips and relationships they can share. Um, and to Katie's point, like what a fun way to think about it. Like your parents, friends, or maybe it could be any family member and their friends, but those are people that are like a step removed, but they clearly like know you, probably think highly and well of you, and can offer their shared experiences, and they want to help, right? They're going to be closer to you and actually want to offer that help. I also love the generational differences here, right? And so, sometimes when we reach out to people, if they're too senior, are they going to want to have the time for us? But when it's within your circle of personal people, they're going to want to make the time for you, and they're senior, so they've really lived well through their careers and can share some actual values. So there's just so much good there. And I just want people to open their minds. Like I think we assume a lot who and what is helpful and what are we supposed to do, but in reality most of us don't know what could be helpful to job search, and the only way to figure it out is to kind of be unassuming. Like you never know who your people may know. You never know where something's going to lead. Often one networking call leads to the next, which leads to the next, and that's where the job is. So you have to be unassuming. I had a chiropractor once introduce me to one of her clients, and I ended up interviewing at their firm, and it was one of the major financial firms. Like that's so random. Like job search can and is random. And so when you're too formulaic about it, you may not see the results you want. You have to be like living in the world. The way Katie is just like, this is my life's adventure, and I'm just doing life. I'm like trying to upskill. I'm having thought leadership. I'm building relationships. I'm going to events. I'm doing programs. I'm trying to write. I'm having that hat of a product manager. I'm doing the job. There's different activities going on where she's just embodying it and doing this career advancement thing instead of just like cookie cutter. I'm applying, I'm applying, I'm applying. Like I don't even think I heard you talk about one job application this whole time. I mean, it's just so amazing. And by the way, we are open to Q&A. I mean, I'm happy to keep riffing, but please do raise your hand if you have a question at this point, and or please DM us and I'll be paying attention to those. But please let us know if there's anything we can answer. Um, but in the meantime, Katie, what types of events do you attend and how do you decide which to go to?
Great question, because I think this is really key. So there's sort of classically you can categorize the different events that exist in your city. So there are events that have panels. There are events that are specifically for networking. There are conferences, and then there's sort of these masterclass sort of things, right? So depending on what you need at that point of time, you choose which ones to go to. For example, if you are new to idea or concept, you go to panels. Panels are great for opening your eye when you don't have information. They're sort of like the Wikipedia of information. It's like, okay, you need to know sort of the foundation of how information and what structures exist out there. The reason why you don't really go there to make network connections, you can, but it's not great because most of the people there are kind of in the same boat as you. You all kind of don't know what's going on. That's why you're there. And the people who do know are usually the speakers, and unfortunately, the speakers get surrounded by everyone who's attending at the end, and so it's not very rich in the sense of getting that one-to-one deep understanding of something. So if you want deeper understanding, those are like the master classes. Those are the workshops. These are the hackathons where you actually start working and building the skills. That's because you've identified you have a gap, right? My personal favorite right now is because I just wanted to create a network of people where I could basically create a LinkedIn environment where I felt safe to post. And so I chose to mostly focus on events where it's just pure to pure networking. And so from those, I would ask them, like, what other peer-to-peer network type events do you see? And I would find more. And I've literally been mapping out all of these small pockets of professional groups across Vancouver. It's been so much fun. And that's where I've been meeting the people who hustle will show up in multiple events, and
Mm,
then you become friends because you see them multiple times.
mm,
So like like this is sort of the power of that sort of things. And I guess the final one, so these are like one-off time-based ones where you go and then it's over. Communities are the last one that are by far my favorite because they're the thing that exists like in the downtimes and all the times wherever. And so I look for professional communities around what I did. I in a past life I was a former virtual community manager, and so I spent a lot of time actually studying how communities are built. And so that is also just one of my passions. So they're great.
yeah.
They're amazing.
Right. I mean, we're on a community platform right now, but for those of you who don't know, and maybe you're just on Fishbowl, I just think today's day and age, there are just communities on communities, and I love that, right? So it's usually this combination of like maybe there's a Slack group, and maybe there's an email newsletter, and maybe they host events, and there's all these different ways that those people connect. And you can think about groups that either relate to your target roles or target industries, or just like demographically, like local to you, or groups, that, how you identify as a person. So there's different ways to find different groups of people that you align with, but the more you get out there, the better. But you want to be careful that, to Katie's point, you're not just like showing up to show up. You want to be strategic about what you attend and why, but you do want to make sure you are getting out there and also just building in time. I say once a week, just Google to find new resources and new groups and new communities, or when you're networking, obviously ask people, what are you a part of, and things like that. And leveraging word of mouth is great because you want to understand what groups are really reputable and valuable and worthwhile, and which ones are active. But leveraging, like protecting time to actually uncover more of these avenues, and not just like, sometimes we forget and we're just like, I'm in the groups I'm in, but what about all the groups you never heard of? Not to be overwhelming, but just once a week finding one new community or group. Katie, you've referred to this as like community hopping.
Mm, one of my favorite things ever. But also, once you've done this enough, you actually find communities that you really resonate with, and then you start becoming somebody who returns to certain communities, and that's where some of those longer term friendships and relationships are formed. I
Yeah.
would also say there's something cool about communities where it's sort of passive. So in job hunt, there's sort of this active portion where you literally have to go out and do all the work. But there's also a lot of passive techniques. I wrote about a recent one in my last LinkedIn post about like automated coffee chats. But communities are where they live. Like communities have all these things where because collectively you're there, all sort of on the same mission or all in the same role, that you don't have to do extra work. You just have to be receptive to receiving and contributing to the work that exists in those spaces. I would say also like the another hack with that is like if you look at the most vocal voices in communities, people who have become thought leaders and stuff, they are connected with even more ideas and like people and communities too. So one of my favorite things is actually to see what other things they are attached to, and that's also how you learn really rapidly. I just follow the little breadcrumbs of like who knows who knows who knows who.
Right. I love it. I love it. And yeah, please do let us know if you have any questions from the audience. But Katie, this is so helpful. And if there's anything else we haven't touched on, please let us know. But, I'm going to keep going down the list. You mentioned being happy and sad all at the same time, right? Like you mentioned that it's fun, but have you encountered like hard parts? Like, do you have down moments? How do you deal with those?
Okay, I'm gonna get really personal because this just happened 2 days ago. So I think the context around this is really important. So let me bring a story from my past that really changed my mindset about how I approach life in general. So during the 3 years I was taking care of grandma, I worked under a professional videographer, and we shot weddings and events and stuff. She trained me into that, and I ended up in one particular wedding where 1 minute I was with the bride and groom happily with them at the altar, photographing perhaps their happiest moment in life. And then the next moment, I was in a limo driving with them because we were going to the hospital. The wife or the bride's father only had so many weeks left to live. And so what I captured in that single day was basically somebody at the happiest, possibly one of the happiest moments of your life, and perhaps one of the saddest within the span of like 8 hours. And what that experience taught me was like, what does it mean to be somebody that has the capacity to be happy and sad at the same time? That is the reality we have to learn to live in. And the way she showed up was like, she didn't do it alone. Like they didn't do it alone. They had a massive community of friends that showed up and threw the wedding together in in 2 weeks. Like literally, this was done because of no one was taking the lead. They just filled in and did what needed to be done. And so I use this sort of experience I had in the past to think about whenever I'm in a dark spot, what are the things I can do to also just invite brightness and happiness into it? So the dark spot of my job hunting journey is my family. I've alluded to this. They don't understand what I'm doing. Let's be frank. I come from a Chinese family, first generation immigrant, and oftentimes it's the story where like if it's not an engineer, software engineer, doctor, any of these stable sort of jobs, they just don't understand, and they will do everything to criticize it to bits and pieces. So, sorry, choking on myself.
Oh my God.
Whew.
Do you want some water?
Oh,
I
I'm,
can't
I'm
give
good.
you some through the phone, but
Give me little the emoji water droplets. um, yeah, and so like literally through this journey, I've been sort of trying to invite my mom into my job hunt by telling her little bits and pieces and seeing how that
Mm,
affects me emotionally.
mhm,
Because let me tell you, I got a lot of trauma with that. And so part of the whole thing last month that I spent 100% networking was to see that impact, right? See how strongly I believe in this pathway despite something negative coming in, right? How fast can I bounce back? And I've been practicing this skill. So she's called me maybe 6, 7 times. And every time I get a little bit shorter. Sometimes I get longer again. Yesterday, I think I cracked the code on how to get out of the funk when I get really sad and depressed from talking to
mm,
her.
mm,
It's honestly doing crazy and fun things with people that I've met and made friendships with.
mhm.
So yeah, you're not
Yeah,
alone.
you need to
Like,
know what your fun thing is and have it in your back pocket because job search will have ups and downs. Like, I don't think we're here to say it's going to be fun every single minute, but like, I have this blog about how hating the job search is not going to help you. I think the point is strategically infusing the authenticity as much as you possibly can, even if that means knowing when you're going to have a down moment, what do I do to rebound? What do I do to pick myself up? Who's there? And what are my tactics that I know give me joy or give me peace or give me solace? And just like really building the habits so you know they're there for you when you need them, whether it's people or whatever it may be. So there will be those ups and downs, but it's building resilience and it's building creativity to just navigate it. And I think job search is harder than people ever realize. It might be one of the hardest things you ever have to go through. Absolutely, right? So don't underestimate it. Recognize that you're doing a big challenge, but it's an opportunity to say, how am I going to approach this chapter and decide that versus like, oh, all job search is the same, all job seekers are the same. This is a bleak, hateful, awful experience or not, right? Like Katie just like flipped it all on its head. And I think it's about the intention of positivity with I'm going to find this group. Why? Because I want to have X, Y, and Z positive outcomes. I'm going to write this thing on LinkedIn. Why? Because it's interesting to me, right? Like, don't forget that you're seeking a job to do work that has impact. Every job is helping someone do something. So, what is the ultimate impact, and where's the innovation, and where's the intrigue that you can find in your professional journey? And remembering whatever your line of work is, how do you bring it back to what matters? The other thing, by the way, your story about being a photographer, like it's just so interesting because I think you can gain a lot of like wisdom and life lessons and perspective and value from doing activities during your job search that may seemingly have nothing to do with job search. Like you were literally doing this like photography gig, right? And it's like you just never know what you can lean into and what value it can give you. Maybe it just gives you like wisdom. Maybe it gives you perspective to take a step back and look at a life situation like a funeral or a wedding or whatever it may be. And so, get creative. Have a few different things going on. Don't just feel like I'm sitting there all day on the online job applications behind a computer where no one's meeting you, right? Like just going out to do photography could give you this value that you had no idea it would give you, right? So the beautiful serendipity of what could come, from different activities and just lifting your spirits, right? Like I think doing any sort of hands-on project reminds you of the value and the creativity and the positivity and the productivity that you can feel. I think job search often just feels so lacking of those moments. So you have to infuse those moments of, you even said that word hustle. Like you can show up to this as if like say you were on the job and you were trying to be like the top performer. Like what if you were trying to be the top job seeker? You'd probably have to learn what works, and you'd have to get creative. You'd have to use your time wisely. You'd have to find support. You'd have to learn how this whole thing works. You'd think about it differently if you asked yourself, what if I were to be the best job seeker? And that doesn't mean burning yourself at either ends of the candle or whatever the phrase is. It doesn't mean burning out. It means getting more strategic and showing up to this with more questions than answers, right? Being curious, right? There's just so much to it. So, Katie, any final words that we haven't touched on yet?
There will always be final words. But yeah, no, this has just been honestly just so much fun. And I did want to just pause and just celebrate because y'all are part of my journey now too. I can now proudly say like I've been on Fishbowl and I talked to
Yay!
a bunch of you know like-minded job seekers who are actually out here showing up and doing things. Because what I discovered on this journey too is like the people who are actually trying things, like that's all of you guys here in this space, like you're trying something that isn't the traditional way of job hunting already, just by showing up. And so just sending out some positivity to you guys to keep on trying and experimenting and have fun with it, really.
Yeah, I love it. I can't believe this hour just went so fast, but you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Rachel Surwitz, or our company. We have social accounts on most social media platforms, either at Woken or at Get Woken. And our website is iamwoken.com. And we always offer a free initial chat if you want to chat through your career, your goals, and how we can, help you and just getting some ideas on what you're doing and how things are going and where you can go from here. And of course, follow my profile to hear about future Fishbowl events that we're planning. And of course, we'll have the recording of this accessible. Katie, where can people find and connect with you?
Yeah, so best place to find me right now is on LinkedIn. So about granularity, I'm planning to actually start posting redacted versions of my letters and stuff that I've been writing to people. You can just see how
Mhm.
embarrassing some of them are. So if you follow me there, you'll start seeing those. But I also have the job hunt epic already on there. So please like reach out. Make sure you introduce where you're coming from. Because I've been
Mhm.
community hopping like crazy, I kind of
Mhm.
forget what community you're at. So please add that little bit so I remember who you are, and we can just sort of reminisce about this sort of experience. And I also just I engage on LinkedIn. I made our friend yesterday. I still can't believe this.
Mm.
um, we literally nerded out about PKM, and it became this ongoing Reddit like sort of forum back and forth thing. So you'll see me around there every so often doing something like that.
Yeah, and just get creative, like start a new community. I mean, there's any number of things to do. So just showing up as yourself is the key, and you never know what's going to come from it. So I hope this was all helpful. Hang in there, everybody. Job search can be difficult, but it also can be an adventure, and you can gain so much from it. And just know that there are people here around you to support you. So we will be back in a few weeks with more Fishbowl talks on all things career. And please do find us, reach out, connect, and we'd be happy to help you all. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.
Bye. It was fun.